So, right. So we have 18 people who are with us today and 19 now. I'm counting as people join us. So we'll start off with the introduction since it is 6:30 now. It's always good to start on time. So we have Dr. Hegde and his wonderful team of speakers. This week for chapter 5, we have Ramaji and we have Meenakshi ji. Ramaji is joining us from the US. Her name is Rama Gopalakrishna. She's a postgraduate in Sanskrit, a volunteer at Vedanta Bharati for over 20 years. She conducts classes on spreading the message of universal oneness through teaching the stotras and meanings of Sri Shankaracharya's compositions. She's conducted many training workshops on chanting and the meaning of Saundarya Lahari Stotra of Sri Shankaracharya. She's a regular student of Param Vedantha, an ardent devotee of His Holiness Sri Sri Shankara Bharati Mahaswamiji of Sri Yadatore Mat, and Parama Puja Swami Paramarthanandaji. I hope I got the pronunciation right. And we're also joined today by Meenakshi ji. Meenakshi Madhusudan is a postgraduate in commerce. She's a homemaker and has attended classes of the Bhagvadgita conducted by the Chinmaya Mission. She is an ardent student of Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir for the past few years. She's a volunteer at Vedanta Bharati, who's also involved in spreading the teachings of Saundarya Lahari Stotra and the Adi Shankara's compositions. So thank you so much for being here. We welcome you with a great deal of gratitude. Over to you, Hegde ji.
Thank you very much, Ramesh, for these words of introduction. We are starting the summary of the chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita. This is a very unique and a very wonderful chapter. All chapters of the Bhagavad Gita have a very specific characteristic. When you say 3rd chapter, we say Karma Yoga. 6th chapter, we say Jnana Yoga. 12th chapter is Bhakti Yoga. Each chapter is very characteristic. There is something very special. But the 5th chapter is very unique. It's still one of the most unique chapters. You have Karma Yoga, you have Jnana Yoga, lot of specially quoted verses. And we will have 2 speakers, both of them in their own unique style, are going to bring a nice summary of this chapter. I will leave it to both of you. Whoever will begin. Ramaji, please.
Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagat Gurum. Our pranams to Lord Shri Krishna and the lotus feet of Puja Swami Paramarthanandaji, and namaskara to everyone. Today let us sum up Sannyasa Yoga, which is in chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita. In this chapter, Shri Krishna summarizes the Vedantic teaching from the previous chapters. Chapter 5 bridges between Karma Yoga, the path of action, and Dhyana Yoga, the path of meditation of chapter 6. Renunciation links them. The 4 main topics discussed in the 5th chapter are 2 lifestyles, Nishtadvayam, that is verses from 1 to 5, 2 types of spiritual disciplines, Sadhanadvayam, verses 6 to 16, the benefits of following these 2 sadhanas, Muktidvayam, verses 17 to 26, and introduction to meditation as a foundation for the next chapter, that is Dhyana Bijam, the seed verse for the tree of chapter 6, from verses 27 to 29. In the opening verse, Arjuna sought guidance from Sri Krishna regarding the better choice between 2 ashramas and 2 sadhanas. Yet Shreyaha etayor ekam me bruhi. Between Karma Yoga and Karma Sannyasa, which one is I should follow? Sri Krishna answers to this question in the rest of the verses of this chapter. The first topic is Nishtadvayam. In the Gita, verse 3.3, Sri Krishna speaks about two lifestyles. Lokesmin vividha nishtha pura prokta mayanagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. Sankhyanam here signifies sannyasa ashrama and yoginam denotes gruhastha ashrama. Two types of lifestyles are gruhastha ashramam, the life of a householder, and sannyasa ashrama, the life of a sannyasi, a renunciate. Sri Krishna says both ashramas are equally good to gain liberation by following the sadhanas of karma yoga and jnana yoga. In gruhastha ashrama, karma yoga can be really followed, whereas in sannyasa ashrama, jnana yoga can be really followed. Shastra says sannyasa ashrama require a particular mental makeup and dedication, which is not that easy for majority of the people. Then ashrama is a place for spiritual practice to attain moksha. Spiritual growth or bandha moksha are not dependent on any of the ashramas. Ignorance of the self is the root cause of samsara, irrespective of any ashrama. Self-knowledge causes moksha. Sri Krishna says sannyasa ashramam is not compulsory for liberation, and you can choose either of the two ashramas for ajnana nivrutti and jnana praptihi, finally moksha. Now let us compare the two ashramas. A person in gruhastha ashramam is secured because he can own anything. He is a part of the society and involves in an active life. He can perform Panchamaha Yagnas and he has a lot of worldly responsibilities. Whereas a person in sannyasa ashrama does not possess anything and he is not a part of the society. He leads a withdrawn and secluded lifestyle. Spiritual practices are easier in sannyasa ashrama since there are no worldly responsibilities. Also, there is no security for him. Sri Krishna says that sannyasa ashrama is ideal for a sadhana chatushtaya sampannaha whose mind is purified and ready to receive the knowledge. One has to have a higher level of dispassion, and hence Sri Krishna says, Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptum ayogataha. Your mind is ayogaha, unprepared. Therefore, you choose gruhastha ashram. Sri Krishna glorifies further a householder. He advises Arjuna that a gruhastha-ashrami who is free from duality and handles raga dvesha is a nitya sannyasi. This you can see in the next slide. Therefore, he is easily set free from bondage of samsara. Choose either one and devotedly follow to attain moksha. Yoga yuktaha munir brahma nachirena adhigacchati. The sage who is adept in karma yoga quickly attains the supreme. The verses 6 to 16 deals with sadhana dvayam, that is karma yoga and jnana yoga. Sri Krishna clarifies that regarding sadhanas, there is no choice at all. Every seeker requires both karma yoga and jnana yoga because their contributions are different towards spiritual growth. Karma yoga prepares the mind for jnana yoga and jnana yoga leads to liberation. In the earlier stage of spiritual path, karma yoga has prominence, and in the later stage, jnana yoga becomes dominant, and they have to be followed simultaneously. Sri Krishna summarizes karma yoga with the verse number 7 to 12 of this chapter. Viveka Chudamani says, Chittasya shuddhaye karma, natu vastupalabdhaye, meaning karma leads to purification of the mind only, not to perceive the reality. In the third chapter, Sri Krishna elaborately dealt with karma yoga. Karma yoga is proper action, that is nishkama karmas or selfless deeds plus proper attitude. Proper attitude is Ishvara arpana buddhihi together with Ishvara prasada bhavaha. Nishkama or sattvika karmas aids spiritual growth and purifies the mind more than Rajasic or Tamasic karmas. Giving importance to selfless deeds is proper action. Sri Krishna refers to Karma Yoga in the verse 10 as Brahmanyadhaya Karmani. That is, a seeker surrenders all his actions to the Lord until he discovers his higher self. He gives up the anxiety regarding future, that is karma phala, so he is not tainted by karma phalam. Therefore, his life is like just as a lotus leaf remains unaffected by water on it. The only result from such an action will purify the mind. Thus, proper action plus proper attitude will make a person, along with nishkama karmas, makes a person yoga yuktaha or a karma yogi. Therefore, every seeker, including a sannyasi, has to purify the mind for gnana yogyata praptihi. These actions for mind purifications are specific to each ashrama. Sri Krishna describes a karma yogi and traces his progression in the verse 5.7. Now let us read the verse. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvannapi na lipyate. One who is established in karma yoga, who has conquered the mind, body and senses, one who sees his own self in all beings, is not tainted even while acting. Here, Sri Krishna gives sadhanas which seekers in both lifestyles must follow. Through karma yoga, yoga yuktaha, a karma yogi becomes a vishuddhatma, having purified his mind, vijitatma, achieving control of body and mind, jitendriyaha, restraining sensory and motor organs. And what is the result? Sarva bhutatma bhutatma purvannapi na lipyate. He realizes the same consciousness in all beings. Sri Krishna restates that a karma yogi is not tainted by the karma phalas even while intensely active. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalayar indriyairapi. A karma yogi works through the instruments of body, mind, and intellect, denying the idea of ownership with regard to all actions. In the verse 11, benefits of karma yoga is seen. He does not have karma abhimana and knows that he is akarta and hence abhokta. He observes inaction in all the actions of the body and organs, thereby attains peace of mind, and he is free from the cycle of birth and death. In contrast to this, ayuktaha, a non-karma yogi, kamakarena phale saktaha, propelled by worldly desires and attain to the results, attachment to the results, nibadhyate, is bound by the shackles of samsara. A karma yogi does not stop any activity of the sense organs or motor organs. Denying the idea of ownership with regard to all actions, he enjoys naishtikim shantim, that is unflinching peace of mind. It is very much required to fence around a sapling to protect it from being eaten by a cow or a goat. Once it grows into a big tree, an elephant can be tied to it. Same way, mind has to be prepared to reach the ultimate goal. Sadhana chatushtaya sampatihi will be a primary protection for a spiritual seeker. Now Sri Krishna talks about Gnana Yoga Sadhanam from verses 13 to 21. It is mandatory for all seekers. Gnana Yoga, it is mandatory for all seekers to follow Gnana Yoga. Gnana Yoga is Vedanta Vicharaha, Shastra Adhyayanam, Vedanta Shravana Manana Nididhyasanam. Shravanam is systematic and consistent study of spiritual scriptures for a length of time under the guidance of a competent guru. Mananam is to meditate, think about it, and getting all doubts clarified. Nididhyasanam is to contemplate on it deliberately until it becomes a conviction to get enlightenment. Scriptural study will lead to the knowledge of Jiva Jagat Ishvara and recognition of Atma, the real nature of every individual. The seeker realizes that the body, mind, and the world are only appearances and they interact as activities. Higher self, the consciousness, eliminates the lower self, the body-mind complex with the reflected consciousness, also the activities of the ego. The profound shift in realizing I from lower self to higher self, the consciousness is Jnana Yoga. The crucial understanding that the consciousness is always free from karmas and its consequences is renunciation of karma, that is karma sannyasa. As long as the identification with the lower self is there, karma yoga is required for a seeker. And the next he says, Vashi, a fully controlled man, renouncing all actions, Dehi, the embodied one, Navadvare Pure, that is, resides in the town with 9 gates as the witness. Naiva Kurvan Akarayan, neither acting nor instigate body and senses to act. It only lights up all karmas, and this is called Sakshi Bhava. The sannyasi identifies himself completely with this higher self, not with his individuality. Atma is akartha and abhokta and does not create anything. So Sri Krishna says the actions, swabhavastu pravartate, the innate nature of the body and mind to be active is responsible for all the actions. Swabhavaha here indicates Trigunatmika Maya. Puja Swami Paramarthanandaji says, Sri Krishna diagnoses Bhavaroga and its cure also in the verse 15 and 16. In the verse 15, Sri Krishna says, Nadatte kasyachit papam naiva sukrutam vibhuhu. A karma sannyasi transcends body and mind, hence merits and demerits do not affect him. In this verse, Sri Krishna identifies the cause of samsara roga and its cure in the verse 16. He says, Ajnanen avrutam jnanam tena mushyanti jantavaha. All our problems are because of the ignorance of our higher nature. Therefore, jantavaha mushyanti, they are deluded. The derivation of the word jantuhu is very interesting, and it says, punaha punaha jayate iti jantuhu. The one which is subject to repeated janma is jantu. Self-knowledge alone destroys self-ignorance. As a result, tatparam adityavat jnanam prakashayati. That is, when ignorance has been destroyed, the knowledge of the higher self is revealed, just as the sun illuminates the object which was previously in darkness. So a gnani is not deluded anymore and sees things in a proper perspective. Up to the 16th verse, Sri Krishna spoke about Jnana Yoga in Sadhana Dasha, that is when he is about to achieve Jnana, emphasizing Nididhyasanam as Vidvat Sannyasa, and the seeker becomes Jnana Nishtha. In the 17th verse, Phalam of this Jnana Nishtha are mentioned as Jivan Muktihi and Videha Muktihi. Videha Mukti Phalam is mentioned in the beginning of this verse and Jivan Mukti in the later verses. In the 17th verse, Sri Krishna describes the sadhanas. Let us see the shloka. Tad buddhayas tadatmanas tannishthas tatparayanaha gacchantya punaravrittim jnana nirdhota kalmashaha. The translation. When one's knowledge, mind, faith, and refuge all are fixed in the Supreme Brahman, then one becomes fully cleansed of impurities through complete knowledge and thus proceed straight on the path of liberation. With the desire for enlightenment, one can become a sannyasi, and it is called Vividisha sannyasa, that is sannyasa before enlightenment. Or a gruhastha or anyone can become from any ashrama, become a sannyasi after enlightenment. This is called Vidvat Sannyasa. In this verse, Tat is referred to the Supreme or Brahman. 4 stages of sadhanas are described in this verse. They are Tad Buddhayaha, Tad Atmanaha, Tannishtaha and Tatparayanaha. Now let us see one by one. Tatparayanaha. Parayanaha is Param Ayanam. That is the only supreme path of my life. That is, realizing Brahman is the only supreme path of my life. And always eager to attain my own higher self, like how we experience in Sushupti. Gain the knowledge of Atma, that is Tad Buddhayaha. Tad Buddhihi means Atma Gnanam. Those are Tad Buddhayaha, people who are established in the intellectual knowledge of Brahman and internalized naturally and experience as existence. That is Aham Brahmasmi, meaning I am that Brahma. Knowledge, this knowledge shines forth. Learning to identify with the higher self is Tadatmanaha. It is realizing the union of the individual self, Jiva, with the universal self, Paramatma. I am that Brahman, that is Satchidananda Swarupam. Always identifying with the higher self naturally is Tannishtaha. It becomes a natural process for him. It is the effort to abide in the higher self it is the effort to abide in the higher self through that gnanam and not to deviate from it. That is Sarvatra Brahma Darshanam. Shankara Bhashyam says these 4 stages as Brahma Vidya Anusandhanam. The various stages that the Gnani goes through to revel in that knowledge are mentioned here. Tad Buddhayaha refers to Paroksha Gnanam or indirect knowledge. Guru Shastra Upadesha Shravanena, they get Gnanam. Tad Atmana refers to Aparoksha Gnanam, internalizing the Gnanam and is Nididhyasanam. Tannishtaha indicates Aparoksha Gnana Nishtha, doing Anusandhanam by reminding always of that Gnanam, holding on to that knowledge through Nididhyasanam. Tatparayanaha is enjoying, relishing, reveling in that state of Nishtha of Nitya Mukti. The next word, next interesting thing is Apunara Vruttim Gachanti. A Gnani attains that stage of non-return and achieves Videha Mukti. It marks the stage when all karmas are burnt and remain as Brahman as always. He is liberated from the bondage of limited being. And now, how do they get Videha Mukti? Gnana Nirdhuta Kalmashaha. They are, Gnanis are called Gnana Nirdhuta Kalmashaha. Kalmasha literally means impurities, and in this context, it is karmani. Mainly kalmashaha is chittamalam, ego, which is kartrutvam and bhoktrutvam. The chittamalams are blown away and cleansed by the power of atmagnanam. The karmas are, sanchita karmas are burned down. Agami karmas are avoided. Prarabdha karmas are exhausted. Therefore, at the time of Gnani's death, there are no karmas. The Ajnana, ignorance of the self, samshayaha, doubts about the self, shastras, etc. And viparyayaha, habitual body identification are also called kalmashaha. A sannyasi by way of asangatvam is ever performing his duties, but never worried for emotionally attached to actions and their results. Thus, the entire route covered by the sannyasi is traced out in this remarkable verse. This is a clear presentation of the path followed by the karma sannyasin to attain moksha. To conclude, regardless of the ashrama, one should follow karma yoga and purify the mind, executing selfless deeds. They can be kayikam, manasikam, and vachikam karmas. Reduce the preoccupations caused by port. Port is all capital letters, P, possession, O, obligatory duties, or relationship, T, transactions. Follow Gnana Yoga through Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Through Gnanam, realize and revel in that Brahman here and now itself. there's a saying, happiest time is now and happiest place is here, because Brahman is present now and here in all forms. Jivan Mukti is talked about in the form of Sarvatra Samadarshanam in the next verse. It reminds me of a bhajan. Har desha mein tu, har vesh mein tu, tere naam aneka tu, tu ek hi ho. That is, you are all pervasive, and you are all pervasive, and you are in all forms. Your name is one, but your forms are many. That is from Vacharambanam Namadheyo Vikaraha. That Chandogya Upanishad says, that is, the cause is one, effects are many. That is what is the thing, the essence of this bhajan. Further explanation will be given by Srimati Meenakshi ji, and she throws more light on this. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The Mahabharata states, Yo na kamayate kinchit brahma bhuyaya vartate. Meaning, one who gives up desires becomes like God. This chapter teaches us that renunciation or a detached spirit is the fundamental principle of all yogas. Renunciation or vairagyam is the greatest gift granted by the Lord to humans. All beings experience joy in renunciation. In a deep sleep state, it is understood that all humans, irrespective of their origin, wealth, occupation, and status, renounce all forms of unnatural superimpositions to uncover their one true self. Upon complete renunciation, our senses, mind, and intellect merge and evolve into the core of supreme consciousness. Therefore, renunciation paves the path to the glory of wisdom. In the next slide, let us observe how the verses of this chapter are divided. Verse 13 marks the start of Sri Krishna's lessons about various pathways to enlightenment. The Gnani acts dynamically, renounces desire and anxiety for the fruit of action. He is self-controlled and paripurna. This is a great segue to our next set of verses that talk about the enlightened Gnani. The topic of Gnana Yoga or inner renunciation, which is the central theme of this chapter, is detailed in the verses 13 to 21. Inner renunciation is a process of discovering our higher nature or the real nature. The first stage in this process is knowing that I am not the body-mind complex, but pure consciousness pervading this body. The second stage is I, the consciousness pervading this body, is the same entity present in all beings. Moving on, verses 20-23 showcases Gnana Sadhanam or mental preparation required for self-knowledge. Verses 24-26 talk about Gnana Phalam or the benefit of self-knowledge. Verses 27, 28, and 29 gives us a glimpse into self-abidance by introducing the topic of meditation. So, this is broadly the content of the second half of the 5th chapter. Srimati Ramaji had discussed till verse 17. Now, let's specifically look into verse 18, as in the next slide. The verse goes like this. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shvapake Cha Pandita Samadarshinaha. The humble sage, that is Agnani, by virtue of true knowledge, sees a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater through the same lens. This is a magnificent verse to illustrate the attitude of equal vision that Agnani cultivates on his way to enlightenment. It is one of the important signposts of freedom. Just like the ocean that doesn't differentiate between two waves, Agnani finds no distinction in this world of names and forms. Everything is equal to Agnani. Agnani sees everyone through the eye of wisdom and not through the physical eye. He recognizes the self or Atma in every detail, Sarvatra Samadarshanam. He believes that the Atma is not affected by any limiting factor, as it is subtle, pure, formless, and attributeless. It is often said that a Brahmana is one who has Sattvika Guna. A cow is associated with Rajasika nature. The elephant, dog, and the downtrodden are Tamasic in nature. But for a Gnani, such associations are immaterial. He sees the same self in all and remains unaffected by three gunas. A Gnani holds the conviction that these so-called defects or modifications are a part of Prakriti or nature. Thus, a Gnani is free from racism, nationalism, ageism, sexism, and even speciesism. In verse 19, Sri Krishna says, those whose minds are established in the equality of vision conquer the cycle of birth and death in this very life. They possess the flawless qualities of God and are therefore seated in the absolute truth, that is Brahman. Before diving deeper, let us take a step back and understand Brahman. How do we define Brahman? Taittiriya Upanishad describes Brahman as Satyam Gnanam Anantam Brahma. Satyam means pure existence, the ultimate truth. Gnanam is knowledge. Anantam is limitless, infinite. Bhrigu part of the same Upanishad also describes Brahman as Anando Brahmeti Vyajanat, meaning Brahman is an ocean of unlimited divine bliss. So Brahman is pure consciousness that is unblemished. Brahman is all-pervading and homogeneous. It is the same entity present in all beings. Everything happens in it, but nothing happens to it. It is constant, like the riverbed that remains motionless, though water flows on it. The substratum is changeless, but the superimpositions and the manifestations in the creation changes according to one's nature, that is by their predominant gunas. The Atma, Brahman, is not affected by any limiting factor, as it is subtle, pure, formless, and attributeless. Thus, Brahman is also defined as Sat Chit Ananda or Sat Chit Ananta. One has to have steadfast understanding and faith that all-pervading Brahman is the infinite, unchanging power from whom all actions proceed. With this firm conviction, one can engage in Swadharma, their own duty, with a serene mind, dedicating it to the divine. This is true sannyasa, or renunciation of false notions with ego. A Gnani has a perfect understanding of this. He has sthira buddhi, or equipoise. Now, as we all know, our lives are governed by three factors: desha, kala, and prarabdha. Everyone, including a saint, has to go through these phases. Nothing changes. But with Gnanam, he is transformed. His inner strength increases and he responds with Samatva Bhava through Shama Adi Shatka Sampatti, Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Let us circle back to the verse. Krishna says, Agnani is Jitaha, signifying a conquered one, in control of oneself in all situations. Ihaiva means even while living here in this world, Agnani attains liberation. Next slide, please. King Janaka is often quoted as the most elevated Gnani, a Rajarshi, a Brahmanishta with a perfect balance of mind amidst multifaceted activities. There are many stories depicting his greatness. Let me narrate one of them. On one occasion, some sages visited his court and questioned him about his identity. How can you be a Gnani and a king at the same time? Without any hesitation, Janaka Maharaja asked them to visit his palace the next day. The inquisitive rishis showed up and upon the king's insistence, went to have food in the dining hall. He asked them to be seated and began serving them food. They were very happy to see the hospitality extended to them. But before they began their meal, they looked up and noticed something very odd. There was a dagger with a sharp edge hanging above their seats, connected from the roof through a thin string. They were shocked and looked at the king. He asked them not to worry and to go ahead with their meals. Despite quietly eating, they were visibly disturbed, and so they questioned the king again. He asked them what their thoughts were, to which they replied that they were thinking only of the dagger above their heads. And yet they all ate sumptuously. Drawing parallels, the king then replied, just like how their thoughts were filled with one thought of the dagger above their heads, he too carried on his assigned duties of the kingdom uninterruptedly, but all the while thinking about Paramatma. So a Gnani will always have at one corner of his mind thoughts of Brahman. That's how he is elevated to the platform of a Gnani. So from this story, we can conclude renunciation is not giving up action. It is acting in the spirit of renunciation. Coming back to Sri Krishna, who reiterates the qualities of a Gnani. Next slide, please. In verse 20, he says, a Gnani is poised in joy and sorrow and has an undiluted mind. In the next verse, he says that a Gnani's mind is independent of external contacts and does not crave for rajasic joys like eating good food, popularity, greed for wealth, etc. He sees something beyond himself. He finds happiness from an intangible source deep within himself. Atmanyeva Atmana Tushtaha, meaning the joy that Gnani derives from his own higher nature. He attains Atmananda by engaging himself in meditation of the absolute principle of Brahman. The words Sukham Akshayam Ashnute means inexhaustible Ananda. So, Ananda or eternal bliss can be compared to Akshaya Patra. Next slide, please. Krishna talks about Indriya Vishayaha in the next verse. Pleasures born out of contact between the sense organs and sense objects. They are indeed sources of sorrow. They all have problems of acquisition, pain of preservation, and loss. The pain or pleasure is due to our mental attachment to them, based on the belief that they generate happiness in us. This is again delusion or ignorance. Samsparshaja bhoga, enjoyments born out of contacts. Adi anta antaha, they all have a beginning and an end. So, Gnanis do not rejoice in them. Na ramate. Why? Because a wise person has inner detachment or renunciation. In verse 23, expanding on dispassion or vairagyam, the Lord now pinpoints the area which requires utmost attention. That is attachment and hatred, desire and anger, which are enemies of peace of mind. The verse says that person is a disciplined yogi who is able to manage the impulse of raga and dvesha. He will be a happy man always. A common man is generally tossed by these two forces. It is indeed very difficult to get over these two qualities. Why is it so? You may ask. The word vegam gives the answer. It means these two qualities emerge within one's mind because it is like a force, a propensity, a gush, an impetus, and a great storm. An ordinary man simply succumbs to it. One has to be always vigilant. One who is capable of mastering these two forces, he alone rises up to become a saint. Just like a man who wants to climb Everest has to be prepared to weather the storms, altitudes, etc., a Gnani should acclimatize himself to the ups and downs of life. Swami Paramarthanandaji gives another good illustration of this. The game of football teaches an important lesson for the players, that is to learn to fall on the ground so that they will learn to get up and again chase the ball. If the player doesn't want to be pushed, then it is better for him to stay outside the game. These lessons can be applied to our lives as well. One may fall on being pushed and pulled, but he has to get up and keep going. A Gnani's mind may waver, but he learns to pull it back, just like the football players do. Next slide, please. In the next set of verses, 24, 25, and 26, we see the realized state of the Gnani from the absolute perspective. Gnana Phalam is explained further. An ascetic mind is as firm as Mount Meru, undisturbed by whatever has happened in the past and indifferent to any rebuffs he may meet in the present. He need not abandon his home or worldly possessions. It is not even turning back on enjoyments. It is growing to enjoy more meaningful things in life. When the wandering of the mind ceases, there asceticism is established. The yogi is in his own self or Atma. It is said that when such a yogi is around, there is no darkness at all. There's only light all around. When he breathes, the whole atmosphere is purified. His compelling presence is enough to make the surroundings a divine place. It is just like the aroma of incense which permeates the temple. Chanting of the Lord's name can be heard from the temple of the Gnani's heart. In this temple, everything is clean and tidy, no dusty feelings, no rubbish heaps of jealousy, no leaking drains of dust, and so no bonfires of anger. The luminous self alone stands tall. Only the single thought of the Lord fills the sky. Ardent seekers yearn to have a mere sight of this Gnani. He enjoys his own company, the self, from which no human is excluded. There's room for everyone. Such a Gnani attains the state of Brahman. Brahma Bhuta Adhigacchati. The Lord says, Saha Yogi Brahma Nirvanam. Nirvanam means aikyam or merger, which literally means dropping the notion that I am away from Brahman. In this way, a Gnani attains Brahma Nirvanam. Krishna addresses such yogis as rishis. The vehicle of absolute freedom comes rolling in on these four wheels, namely, Kshina Kalmashaha, sages who are free from impurities, Chinna Dvaidaha, who are in the realm of non-duality, Yatatmanaha, who are self-controlled, restrained, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha, who serve for the good of mankind. So, Nishkama Karma, service to mankind, is a great quality which a Gnani has. This, in fact, is the real purpose of our existence. Next slide, please. Verse 26 is regarded as the perfect summary of this chapter. It gives the bottom line of spiritual life. The verse goes like this. What is that? Kama krodha viyuktanam yatinam yatachetasam abhito brahma nirvanam vartate viditatmanam. Oneness with Brahman takes place both here and after. For whom? For the self-restrained ones, who are free from desire and anger, whose minds are restrained, and who have known the Atma. Krishna calls such Gnanis as Viditatmanaha, one who pursues spiritual knowledge with commitment. Viyuktaha and Yatachetasaha means one who is free from lust and anger, and who has mastery over mind. Abhitaha means both the worlds. A Gnani gains freedom here in this world itself, that is while living in his body-mind complex, which is referred as Jivan Mukti, and after the fall of the body, that is death, known as Videha Mukti. So, a Gnani merges with Brahman in both the worlds. Thus, a Gnani who has all these qualities attains Brahma Padavi. Next slide, please. The remaining three verses are not exactly a part of this chapter, since the content is a little different. They are a preview to the next chapter, where the topic of meditation is taken up. Lord Krishna, with great patience, has raised Arjuna from a state of despondency to a state of where he is taught the science of meditation. Meditation helps in the assimilation of Gita teaching. On a high level, here are the steps involved. Step 1, external contacts are completely shut out. Even the thoughts are given up here. Step 2, the eyes are partially closed and focused between the two eyebrows. Step 3, the incoming and outgoing breaths are equalized with a slow pace, that is pranapano samau kritva. Step 4, as a consequence of following the above mentioned steps, the mind concentrates on one thing alone, that is liberation or moksha. When the mind stops recognizing worldly things in this manner, there can be no feeling of egoism. Krishna ends the chapter with a beautiful description that one can contemplate on. The verse goes like this. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam natva mam shanti mruchati. The Lord says, knowing me this way as one who receives and enjoys the offerings of all sacrifices and austerities, as one who is the Lord of the universe, as a friend of all creatures, one attains tranquility. This is a recipe of life in which knowledge, action, and devotion are inextricably fused into one. This Brahma Jnana requires the grace of God, which comes through devotion. Let us see the learnings from this chapter. Shri Krishna says, a person is happy only if his desires and anger is in control. Renunciation gives power. It enables success. It signifies going up the ladder. Just like a butterfly breaks out of its cocoon, soars into the sky and flies to enjoy the juice of nectar, our lives get transformed from mediocrity to excellence, from drudgery to revelry, from indignation to inspiration, from misery to magic. All we have to do is renounce. Renounce to rejoice. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavadgita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishnarjuna Samvade Karma Sannyasa Yogo Nama Panchamodhyayaha. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Thank you. Thank you all. On behalf of Srimati Ramaji and myself, we offer our sincere pranams to the lotus feet of Swami Paramarthanandaji. Respectful pranams to our Guru, Dr. Hegde sir. Thank you, sir, for giving us this opportunity. Sincere thanks to the office bearers of School of Ancient Wisdom. And thank you all for listening so patiently. Thank you.